Hi, my name is Ethan Hale. For years, I lived quietly in a cabin, forgotten even by my own family. Then one evening at a dinner I wasn't even supposed to attend, my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and laughed. "You a beggar?" She had no idea that the restaurant they were celebrating in was mine. Ethan sat quietly at the dining table, the scent of rosemary chicken still lingering in the air. Across from him, Paige reached for a neatly folded paper from her side and slid it across the table without a glance. "Adults pay their share," she said, her tone crisp as new dollar bills. "How long do you plan on living here for free?" The paper stopped inches from his plate, a printed utility bill with yellow highlights and annotated calculations. Ethan didn't flinch. He studied it in silence, nodding once, then returned to cutting his chicken, the blade of the knife steady in his hand. The clink of cutlery carried on for a few strained moments before Noah broke the silence with a cough and a mumbled request for more water. Paige passed him the pitcher, not breaking eye contact with Ethan. Noah didn't look up. The table, though filled with food, felt hollow. Later that evening, Ethan washed the dishes alone. Paige and Noah had retreated to the living room, murmuring about work emails and weekend plans. The faint sound of the television filtered in, accompanied by the soft tapping of rain against the windows. Ethan dried his hands with a towel, his eyes drifting toward the wooden shelf in the corner of the kitchen. A photograph rested there, sun-faded, its frame slightly chipped. It captured a younger Ethan, arm around a woman with warm eyes and a laugh frozen in time. Beneath it lay a folded piece of yellowed paper. He reached for it, his fingers lingering on the soft crease as he unfolded it. "Hail Tapas, Project Number 1. The hand-sketched blueprint stared back at him, edges worn from years of storage. In the lower corner, a signature read simply, CH. He traced the lines with the back of his nail counter spaces, seating layouts, a small note that read, "Natural lighting must feel like memory." A ghost of a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. He didn't say a word when Paige demanded rent. He hadn't spoken much since his wife passed, really. But in the quiet of the guest room, his room now, he moved with purpose. The walls were bare, save for a small corkboard and a single suitcase by the door. He placed the blueprint gently inside, folding it back into its original square. Booting up an old laptop, he typed with precision. An inbox opened. The name Carlos hovered in a thread dated years back, last message unread. He clicked compose. Subject: time to meet again. A few more lines typed with intention, then the cursor hovered over send. A deep breath, a glance at the blueprint, and then he clicked. Outside his door, footsteps creaked. Paige. Her shadow stretched long against the hallway light as she slowed by the open door. She paused, peeking in. Ethan didn't react. He folded the blueprint back up and zipped the suitcase halfway. His hands were steady. Paige leaned slightly forward, her eyes scanning the room. Her gaze lingered on the paper in his hand, but she said nothing, just stared at him as if he were some painting too dull to comment on. After a moment, she moved on. Ethan stood still, back straight. He didn't follow her. He didn't need to. He took one last look at the room, now stripped of any real belonging. Then he turned off the light and sat on the edge of the bed, the ticking of the clock breaking the silence. Noah didn't knock. Neither did Paige. Morning would come, and he would be gone. "I'll be leaving in the morning," Ethan said softly to the empty room. "Thanks, I found what I needed to know." Paige pushed open the glass doors of the high-rise hotel heels, clicking confidently against polished marble. She didn't know that tonight's celebration would feature a very particular guest, someone she thought had quietly exited stage left. The maitre d' welcomed her with a polite nod and led her through the opulent dining room where velvet booths and golden chandeliers set the tone of understated excess. Her colleagues were already gathering their laughter, carefully modulated their blazers, too crisp, too perfect. The restaurant, new and impossibly upscale, had become the talk of Portland's inner circle. She had picked it precisely for that reason. Status. "Table for 12, under Paige Halton," she said crisply. "Right this way, ma'am. We've arranged the private lounge as requested." Back in a quieter room separated by frosted glass, she adjusted the placement cards and gift bags. The dinner was her idea, a strategic display of generosity for her team's quarterly success. Applause would be expected, maybe a short speech. She would shine. Elsewhere, in a quieter office above the main floor, Ethan sat with Carlos, pen in hand. The agreement lay between them, the final transfer of ownership of Hail Tapas Seattle to Carlos. The ink dried slowly as Ethan pressed down on the signature line with care. For a cleaner future, he murmured, where no one forgets who belongs where in the house. Carlos chuckled, sliding the final folder into a leather case. I'll handle the paperwork. You enjoy the show tonight. You sure you don't want me to drop your name? Ethan stood adjusting his collar. No need. Let's see how long it takes them to notice. Moments later, Ethan entered through the staff entrance, a route he knew by heart. Though this Portland branch was no longer his, the structure bore his fingerprints. The custom light fixtures, the Mediterranean tile, the menu items that hadn't changed in years. Carlos greeted him discreetly near the kitchen. Your table's ready. They booked the lounge. I thought you'd like the main floor where people can see you. Ethan nodded, settling into a seat at a corner table with a view of the lounge's entrance. A server passed by and did a double take. Mr. Hale, she asked, beaming. Welcome back, sir. Ethan smiled. It's good to see the place thriving. Word spread fast among the staff. One by one, servers and chefs paused to nod or greet him. A few diners glanced over puzzled as someone called for the Ethan's Reserve, a dish long removed from the public menu, but still known in the kitchen. Inside the lounge, Paige raised her wine glass to a cheer. Laughter bubbled up, artificial precise. Mid-speech, she turned slightly and noticed a stir on the main floor. A familiar profile. Her smile faltered. Excuse me, she muttered, stepping out. She stopped cold. There, sitting as if he'd never left, was Ethan, dressed in a charcoal suit posture, regal eyes calm. A server poured him a glass of vintage red with a murmured, as usual, Mr. Hale. Noah emerged behind her. Is that Dad? He blinked, startled. What's he doing here? Ethan didn't rise. He simply raised his glass toward them, a subtle motion that held more gravity than any confrontation. Some people only remember me when they need money, he said, voice measured. But this restaurant, it never forgot who I am. Paige opened her mouth, but no words came out. The staff continued to greet him with deference, and a nearby diner gave him a thumbs up for the meal. She glanced around. No one seemed to find his presence strange. No whispers of mockery, just recognition. For a moment, she looked like she might say something sharp, then swallowed it down with a forced smile. She returned to the lounge, face tight. Noah lingered, eyes darting between his father and the room's growing awareness. At Ethan's table, Carlos leaned over, his voice low. Ready for phase 2, Ethan didn't blink. It's time. Noah frowned as he scrolled through his inbox. Among the usual work updates sat an email from Mason & Cole, LLP, with a subject line that made his stomach clench. Request for identity verification, estate transfer procedures. He opened it, reading quickly. His eyes widened as he reached the line, per Mr. Ethan Hale's request. We are finalizing an updated directive to remove previous heirs and redirect ownership under new entities. Kindly respond for verification only if you believe this to be an error. He reached for his phone, fingers shaking. No response. Straight to voicemail. At a quiet law office near downtown Portland, Ethan sat across from Mason, the firm's senior estate lawyer, once his and Linda's trusted advisor, now summoned for something far more precise. I want it airtight, Ethan said, his voice devoid of emotion. Mason adjusted his glasses. You understand what you're asking: for full removal of Noah and Paige from all remaining legal claims, and the institution of an irrevocable trust in the names of... He paused, flipping the document. Carlos Navarro and the Hale Culinary Foundation. Ethan nodded. Correct. Everything: royalties, equity, deferred accounts, licensing. All of it. Carlos leaned forward, placing a thick folder on the table. These are the accounting logs, he said, opening them. You'll find clear records of Paige transferring funds from Mr. Hale's account into a shell LLC last year, supposedly for renovations. It was rerouted into her private startup fund within 3 days. Mason's brow furrowed. So she was using gifted money as leverage for personal ventures. That violates the original intent clause. This supports your claim. Ethan's eyes didn't flinch. I'm not interested in punishment, but I won't be complicit in their sense of entitlement. He reached into his briefcase and retrieved the folded restaurant map. Unfolded, the old ink traced out the original Hale Tapas design, but now written across the bottom in fresh black marker were 5 words: sell everything. Keep my dignity. Mason sighed, stamping a notary seal on the next page. This will trigger automatic updates to state property registries, business accounts, and digital asset firms. Once filed, it can't be undone. Ethan's tone was steady. Exactly what I want. Back at home, Noah paced the kitchen. He tried calling again. No answer. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding, he muttered, then immediately knew it wasn't. Ethan's recent quiet distance, the sharp look in his eyes at the restaurant, the confidence, it all made sense now. He clicked reply on the law firm's email and typed, "Please clarify, is this update final?" He didn't expect the reply that came within the hour. Yes. All directives are signed, notarized, and entered into record as of this morning. In the office, Ethan signed the final sheet. Mason handed him a ceremonial copy with a leather binding. The Hale estate is now under full reallocation. Noah and Paige no longer have any legal claims. Ethan took the document and stared at the signature. Ethan Hale, custodian of legacy, not inheritance. He stood, nodded to Carlos, then turned to Mason. One more clause, he said calmly. I want to add this to the statement of purpose. Guardianship of family is earned, not inherited by default. Mason smiled faintly. I'll make sure it's visible in the cover letter. As Ethan gathered his coat, Mason looked up. You know, Mr. Hale, this decision is irreversible. Ethan met his gaze without flinching. I know. That's the point. A junior editor at the Culinary Standard sat hunched over a dusty archive folder in the magazine's storage basement. She was hunting down material for a retrospective piece on legendary Northwest restaurants. Then her eyes caught a sepia-toned photo clipped to a 2003 issue. Ethan Hale, founder of Hale Tapas, opens third location in Seattle. The headline read, She blinked. Wasn't Hale Tapas run by that sharp-looking woman, Paige Whitaker? The new face of modern tapas dining? Intrigued, she snapped a photo and posted it to Reddit's AR Chef Lore with the caption, Wait, this guy founded Hale Tapas. It took all of 20 minutes for the post to go viral. At that very moment, Paige was in full PR mode, posing with a backdrop banner that read, Tapas for the New Age, with her name listed underneath, Paige Whitaker, Executive Visionary. She had just posted a carousel of photos to her Instagram story with the caption, So proud to represent the Hale Tapas legacy as we bring it into the next generation. Comments flowed in with heart emojis and fire reactions. But then came the messages. Didn't you inherit the restaurant whose Ethan Hale read it, says someone else started it? Her smile faltered. Carlos sat in his office watching the Reddit thread swell with comments. He clicked upload on a Dropbox folder titled Founder's Proof. Inside were scanned documents, the original LLC registration under Ethan's name, signed recipes, and most damning of all, a video of a much younger Ethan in a crisp chef's jacket unveiling the 7-taste tapas dish at a 2002 culinary expo. In the video, a banner behind him clearly read, Hale Tapas, a chef's dream, by Ethan Hale. A former sous chef chimed in on Twitter, Chuck, I worked with Ethan in the early 2000s. He built that kitchen brick by brick. Anyone saying otherwise is rewriting history. The momentum snowballed. Food bloggers picked it up. Within hours, Food and Fire Weekly ran the headline, The Forgotten Founder Who Really Built Hale Tapas. By evening, it was trending on Google under Culinary Founders, US. Paige called an emergency press briefing the next morning. Cameras flashed as she stood behind a podium. I am the current executive director of Hale Tapas, she declared, and I honor all who came before me. But this brand now stands for innovation, not nostalgia. A reporter raised his hand. Is it true you've claimed to be the founder in recent marketing documents? Another one followed up. Why is there no mention of Ethan Hale on the official site's Our Story page? Paige's jaw tightened. We're updating our materials. Before she could finish, a delivery intern, a young man who had once trained under Ethan during a summer apprenticeship, stepped up to the mic. I just want to say, he blurted out, Chef Hale taught me how to hold a knife, how to respect a kitchen. You can modernize all you want, but without him, none of this would exist. The room fell silent. Later that night, Carlos forwarded the trending chart to Ethan, who was watching quietly from his apartment. The headline glowed at the top, Who really founded Hale Tapas Top 3 in culinary Twitter? Top 5 on Google. Carlos sent a short message. Your silence is louder than their claims. At her condo, Paige stared at her inbox. A new message had arrived from the State Department of Business Oversight Notice of Inquiry. Alleged misrepresentation of foundership in public relations documentation. Her hand trembled. Attached was a screenshot of her previous press kit with her name listed as original visionary founder. At the bottom of the message was a formal line. You are required to appear for clarification prior to the International Culinary Conference next week. The lights dimmed across the grand ballroom of the Oregon International Culinary Conference. On the massive LED screen above the stage, the announcement flashed, Guest of Honor Update. Due to recent clarifications, we are proud to welcome Chef Ethan Hale, founder of Hale Tapas. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. At table 9, Paige Whitaker stiffened. She turned toward Noah, whose face drained of color. This must be a mistake, she whispered. They meant me. Noah didn't respond. Backstage, Ethan adjusted the knot of his dark navy tie. His reflection stared back at him, older, weathered but sharper than ever. He exhaled slowly. You ready? Carlos asked, handing him a wireless mic. Ethan nodded once. Let's finish this. As he walked onto the stage, the crowd burst into polite applause, then louder, as the screen behind him faded into a black and white photo. Ethan Hale, 2002 First Tapas Concept in Oregon. The host cleared her throat. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to reintroduce to the culinary world a man whose legacy was nearly erased, but whose flavors never were. Chef Ethan Hale. Ethan stepped forward. No dramatic gestures, no posturing, only the steady voice of someone who had nothing to prove and everything to reclaim. I'm not here to challenge anyone, he began, or to argue about names on websites or plaques. A pause. I'm here because stories, real ones, eventually find their way back to the light. Behind him, a montage played video footage of Ethan in his 30s, cooking over open flame, presenting dishes to young culinary students, laughing with his late wife in a grainy home video. I stepped away from Hale Tapas years ago, quietly, willingly, but silence, I've learned, is often mistaken for absence. Paige stood up. Excuse me? Security moved quickly. The MC stepped forward. Ms. Whitaker, please. The program must continue. The cameras didn't miss her as she was quietly escorted out of the ballroom. Ethan continued. I'm not here to take anything back. I've already given it all away to the one person I trust with the spirit of Hale Tapas. Carlos stood up briefly, holding up a notarized transfer document. The room erupted in whispers. But I am here to say one thing, Ethan said. Legacy isn't a logo. It's not a name etched on a menu. It's what the people remember and what they carry forward when you're not in the room. As he stepped off the stage, the crowd gave a standing ovation. A few chefs clapped with tears in their eyes. One leaned toward his colleague and whispered, That man didn't just serve food, he served truth. Outside the ballroom, the Oregon sky had turned a cool slate gray. A breeze rolled over the conference plaza. Carlos caught up beside Ethan. You sure you're not going to miss it? He asked. The spotlight. Ethan chuckled softly. I missed a lot of things, he said, but not that. Carlos smiled. Want to get back in the kitchen? Ethan shook his head, looking into the distance. I've got somewhere else I need to be. And with that, he walked off into the quiet, a man who had finally cooked his last course in someone else's story. The emails flooded in like a tide that wouldn't recede. Subject: Legacy episode, We Want You on Air. Subject: Cooking Truth Chef, Hale's Comeback. Subject: Your Story, Inspired Millions, Let's Talk. Ethan Hale read them all. Then calmly he replied to each with the same 6 words. Thank you. I'm not coming back. A week had passed since the Oregon Culinary Conference. The world was still buzzing, but Ethan wasn't. In a quiet cabin nestled against the slopes of Mount Hood, he cracked 2 eggs into a cast-iron pan. The yolks glowed golden in the morning light. Beside the stove, a chipped coffee mug sat steaming with black roast. He flipped the newspaper, barely read the headline about founder fraud scandals and chef integrity. That storm belonged to someone else now. At Hale Tapas HQ, Carlos had replaced the front page of the website. Now under history, there was no marketing fluff, only a simple sentence. Founded in 2002 by Chef Ethan Hale. Rebuilt in 2025 with the same heart. Employees who never knew the man now quoted him in team meetings. They passed around a video of his final speech like gospel. A knock at the cabin door. "Open up, old man," a voice called. Ethan chuckled and walked over. Mason stood in the snow holding a box wrapped in butcher paper and twine. "You still drink that tar you call coffee?" he asked, stepping inside. Ethan grinned. Every morning. They ate waffles by the fire. Mason poured syrup too fast like always. "Any regrets?" he asked, eyes catching the light. Ethan didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Yeah. I regret letting it go on so long. I regret thinking silence was the same as peace." He took another bite. "But I don't regret how it ended." Mason reached into his coat and pulled out the box. Inside was a hand-carved wooden plaque. Burned into the grain, Hail Tapacest. 2002, built with fire. "Not fame, I made it myself," Mason said. "Thought you'd want the original logo back." Ethan touched the rough edge, then smiled. He hung it on the wall by the window. It caught the morning sun just right. That afternoon, he sorted through the last of the mail, bills, flyers, ads, and one handwritten envelope with no return address. He opened it. Inside, a single sentence. "Thank you for not staying silent, Mr. Hale." No signature. No need for one. As dusk settled over the mountains, Ethan poured another cup of coffee. No applause. No spotlight. Just the crackle of firewood and the quiet breath of a man who had said enough finally at the right time, and then chosen the rarest victory of all, walking away. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you resonate with this story.